is MC Fireside Chats, a weekly show featuring conversations with thought leaders, entrepreneurs, and outdoor hospitality experts who share their insights to help your business succeed. Hosted by Brian Searl, the founder and CEO of Insider Perks, and powered by insights from Modern Campground, the most innovative news source in the industry.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of MC Fireside Chats. Hopefully you all can hear me. There's actually a lawnmower company behind me. The wind's going crazy, and I can barely hear you from my speaker that's busted in my laptop. But other than that, we're going to have a great show. So if you guys can't hear me, just kind of wave at me and tell me to shut up, and then maybe Zach can take over or something, and we'll have a great show. Anyway, but super excited to be here for our regular glamping episode. I think this is my first one in like 2 months. I was on vacation last time you guys got together, so I heard it was a great show. I heard everything went smoothly and wonderfully, and probably way better than had I not been on vacation. But super excited to welcome a couple special guests to the show. We got 2 Sarahs and a James here, Sarah Stahl, and we've got Sarah and James from Glawning, and they're going to introduce themselves in a minute here. And then actually I can't even say that like he just popped in, because for us backstage, you can't hear that lawnmower in the background. It's right behind me. Anyway, for those of you who popped up backstage before, we were discussing, like, Miguel Huerta just poofed in during the intro. So he's here from the Mexican Glamping Association. And then we have Zachary, Todd Winperry, and Alessandro. So you guys just want to go around the room and introduce yourselves briefly. Maybe we can start with our recurring guests and go from there. Nobody wants to start?
Yeah,
I'll
sure.
start.
I will. Oh, Zach, go, please.
I'm Zach. I'm a licensed architect with Clockwork out of Kansas City. I lead our outdoor hospitality studio, and we help people build glamping resorts around the country and around the world. Got our first couple of international projects under our belt this year. So
Awesome. Thank you for being here, Zach. Miguel, you want to go?
Hello, everybody. I'm Miguel Huerta. I'm the president of the Mexican Glamping Association. And things are looking up. I think that now that the summer is all over the world, I can foresee that this will be the summer of glamping. So, pretty interesting.
Awesome. Excited to have you here, Miguel. Todd.
Hi, I'm Todd Winperry. I'm with Horwath HDL. I provide consulting services to the hotel and glamping industry, working with clients all over the United States and also the world. And happy to be here and chat about Fireside Chats today.
Awesome. Thanks for being here, Todd. This is wonderful. I'm my speaker's broken, and I'm telling you, there's a lawnmower right behind me. It's crazy. Alessandro.
Yes, I'm Alessandro. I'm part of a Italian-Dutch family business. We operate 8 glamping resorts at the moment, and we are almost ready to open number 9. So over the past years, we also did quite a lot of development of new locations, and bringing in a bit of, I would say, European market insights.
Awesome. Thank you for being here, sir. Sarah Stahl. You want to go first?
Hey there, I am Sarah. I'm the marketing director for Retreat Resort. We are Alabama's only glamping retreat, and we have 17 on-site properties currently, and we're building 4 more and a spa.
Awesome. Thanks for being here, Sarah. And Sarah and James.
Hello. So I'm James, obviously. This is Sarah. Husband and wife team. We run a retail company in the UK called Glawning. We sell awnings, glamorous awnings, hence the name. We sell awnings for camper vans. I think they're called Adarooms or something in the US, but they're essentially tents that stick on the side of a camper van, and we've been doing that for 10 years now, I think.
Yeah.
Just over.
Yeah, we designed it together in 2013, and we've been selling them ever since.
Awesome. Thank you guys for being here. I'm just literally watching your mouths because I can't hear anything. So if I interrupt somebody, just kind of wave at me and be like, hey, I wasn't done. I'm going to have to go inside and try to find another speaker in a second. But we talked a little bit about briefly, I wanted to start maybe perhaps with a topic of conversation here that will give me enough room to breathe while perhaps Zach can lead the conversation while I go get my speaker. We've been having some good conversations the last few weeks. Well, I don't know if I want to call them good, but we've been having some conversations with campground owners, with the RV side, about how perhaps there's a little bit of a slowdown with some of the interest. I shouldn't even say interest in camping, but the people who are booking in advance, the people who are perhaps willing to travel as far across the country, things of that nature. And so I'm curious if that type of behavior has been seen in the glamping industry. And if you don't mind just leading this for 5 minutes, Zach, I'll be right back.
Sure. So, I think it's a good topic of discussion. I think, especially on the development side, part of what we deal with is always forecasting, right? A lot of our projects, and we start the work, it's 3 to 6 months of design and permitting and entitlements, and then there's a funding stage, and then, maybe a year, even 18 months to get a property built. And so, from the time we kind of first meet with a client until they're opening their site could be up to 2 years. So we always try to do that look ahead in the industry. And I think over the last couple of months, especially, but more so this year than in previous years, I think we've kind of enjoyed 2-3 years of, call it the glory days of glamping, where it was really an emerging industry. There was a lot of interest. There was a lot of funding. New resorts opened and opened with full bookings. And we're starting to see that kind of stabilize now, especially as there's a little bit more competition, more sites being opened. So I think that's a kind of a good jumping off point. Sarah, I'd be interested to hear kind of with all the sites that you guys manage and run, what are you seeing and what's in your forecast for the year ahead?
I got to be completely honest that this topic that you guys just brought up, has floored me, because I am seeing none of that. And I don't know if it's because we're saturated where we're located, as far as not having very much competition. We're the only one in the entire state. I was just actually on a podcast interview yesterday talking about the fact that I can't believe how many people are flying in just to visit us. So we operate at about 60 to 70% occupancy, and that just continues to climb. And then when guests get here, they don't want to leave. They just want to stay with us. So we continue to build. And from the way that it sounds like glamping resorts are typically built, or maybe more modestly built, you build first and then sell the units, where our owner is a little on the crazy side in all the great ways, and he has actually built in stages. And so we've actually been selling as we've been building out, and the marketing momentum off of that has been incredible, because we work with content creators quite a bit. And so we have gained so much popularity. I see the exact opposite of what you're talking about here in Alabama.
Now, I know I missed a couple minutes of the conversation, but we were talking about obviously the economic stuff. And so are you saying you sell instead of rent, or?
Oh yeah, I say sell like that's my sales mind thinking. So
okay, so then it's not ownership. Okay,
I'm talking about just booking out the unit. So the company is a startup that's a little less than 2 years old, and we've gone from 30% occupancy to 60% occupancy in 6 months. So with demand so high that we have a wait list on our weekends now. So as far as leveling out, I don't know if we're seeing a level out, and maybe it would have been higher occupancy rate 2 years ago. But from where we're sitting, I don't see a decline. I see an increase.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think most of the clients that I've had conversations with from the camping side of it, and we just don't do as many glamping resorts. We do some, but our background is in campgrounds, RV parks. I think we've heard more primarily from the people who would be stopping points along the way, or the overnight destinations on the way to somewhere else. That, like, I talked to somebody in California yesterday, it was down 50% year over year.
Ooh.
And I just told them, like, I mean, they're right in the middle of, like, literally between, like, LA and Sacramento. They're like the only reason you're going to that area of the country is because you're driving right past them.
Mhm.
And so you've got to reframe your mindset there, and I think a little bit, and try to go after a different audience, because I don't know how quickly that audience is coming back unless prices plummet. But is that what generally we're seeing in different places? I know.
In Europe, not, to be honest. So what we see is that actually occupancy is raising. Obviously, here we have quite some differences between European countries, because you have, like, the Nordics in Europe are very different than south of Europe. But I think overall, what I hear is that it's still, like, in a plus year on year. What we are noticing really, really a lot, and also like other colleagues, is that the spendings of the guests when they are on site are really lower than previous years.
Hmm.
So, like in the food and beverage, in all the extra services, excursions, and this kind of things, that's under real big pressure here. But the overnight itself seems to be like better than in the past years.
Which almost makes sense, right? Like, if one of the big analogies that I give to many of our clients on the phone, I think maybe I talked about this last week on the show, but there was a video I saw on YouTube about people who were grocery shopping in Canada, and I promise this is RV related, but they've been spending less at the grocery store in 2024 than they did in 2020, and the only, even though prices are 20% higher, the only way that works is if you either buy less food, or you buy more processed and less fresh fruit and vegetables that cost more. And so I think the whole thing about the story was there's only certain things that you can cut from your budget that are flexible. You can't call up the bank and be like, I just want to pay less on my car and my house this month, so I'm only going to sing a half. But you can cut food, you can cut travel, you can. And so I think if you're someone who really enjoys the outdoors and camping and glamping, then maybe that's a conscious decision to say, like, I want to keep this trip no matter what, but maybe I can cut some of the spending on site.
That's exactly what we are noticing.
Do you see?
I would.
Go ahead.
I would say. So I had a really good conversation this last week, and actually, it would be some folks that would be great to have on the show. One of our clients, Sweetbriar Ridge up in Minnesota, they just launched. They just opened. They've got one unit open right now. They're bringing 2 more on board in the next couple of months. They opened up their booking window thanks to some of their local contacts in the area, some influencers that they've worked with. They've got an incredible Instagram page that is showing off their new dome unit. They are booked from now every single weekend clear through Labor Day. They filled their entire summer season in 3 weeks. And it was funny because I called to see if there was a chance I could get up to visit them and see them. And he's like, yeah, sometime after Labor Day, maybe, because they're booked literally every day or every weekend and some entire weeks from now clear through Labor Day. And so for a startup, I know that they're one of the first in their area, in their region. So I'm glad to hear kind of what Sarah talked about. I think it depends on where you're at. But I think some of those markets that have become more saturated, we're seeing a bit of a plateau, or people are being more selective, or they're more price conscious at where they're gonna pick. But I think in these new areas, especially if you can come in, control the market, or be the only option in that area, I'm not seeing a slowdown on the glamping side. Certainly on the funding side, especially on RV and campgrounds, I think that the Fed's just announced today that they're still going to hold interest rates. There's no cuts, not anytime soon. And in fact, maybe not at all this year. And I think that keeping the interest rates high is really crippling new development and new investment. So, that's not good for my business. But I think it's certainly good for existing operators who are in the space, that it means it's going to be a while till there's a bunch more of investment on additional sites and properties in the space.
And that's kind of, I think, what I wanted to hear, but what I expected to hear, because I think the barrier to filling a glamping resort that's 2 to 10 to 20 glamping tents or yurts or accommodations is much easier than a 400 site RV park, right? For example. So I'm glad to hear that. Is that the general consensus that I missed? And then we can move on to something that's happier. Well, that's happy.
I'll add in on a little bit on that. The going from the general to the specific, and with accommodation. Most of my work has in the past been in hotels. I still do a little bit of that. The credit card debt is at a 40-year high. Last year, general tourism in the U.S. was down a little bit because some revenge travel coming off of 2022. So people are going overseas as opposed to here. I think this year, just as a general rule, people are pulling back a little bit, realizing that they spent a year, spending like they normally would do, but all the prices kind of went up. And so I think people are tightening their belt a little bit. That would be the general rule. But when you get into specifics, and getting to your point around, RV parks in California, I mean, California clearly has the highest gas prices in the country. At least as far as I know, it's I go back and forth there all the time. So it's at least $1 to $2 higher than even Oregon, which is still quite high. So that may be having an effect. And when you get into really, more smaller markets like Alabama, it sounds like you've got a big disparity between supply and demand. You're the only supply and there's tons of demand. That is a general rule that consists today in the glamping world. The demand is still very high, which is great. So if you're in a market that serves 2 to 4 to 6 million people and there's not many options, you should be winning. In getting back to California, I can tell you that the projection for wine country, which plays a lot off San Francisco and the Bay Area, but also inbound, is about 10 to 14% off right now, year on year, and projected to continue to be 10% down off of last year, which was a bad year compared to 2022 as well.
For visits just to wineries you're talking about, or stays at wineries?
I'm talking about resorts at the wineries. I don't really winery, but the wine country, I'm dealing with mainly, resorts and hotels there. They're all, both the pricing is going down, good time to visit. And the values of those assets are also going down as well. And I would echo to what Zach mentioned about interest rates and the funding environment right now. It's still really tough out there for funding, particularly from the equity side. That's for sure.
But I do think along those same lines, glamping is somewhat of a unique industry. That when you look at that economic climate, when you look at what are people willing to spend and what are they willing to do, we're seeing the pullback from flying or going somewhere farther away. But typically when you look at glamping resorts or campgrounds, most of their customer base is going to be within a 3 to 4 hour drive. Mm-hmm. And so I think as economic conditions get tough, people look for what is something fun that we can do, because they still value the experience, right? And ultimately that's the business we're in, is delivering an experience. They want that experience, but instead of traveling to a national park and glamping, they're looking at, is there someplace nearby that's a day trip or a long weekend trip for us? And so I think it depends on the markets you're in. But I'm encouraged by that, because it seems to be one of those things where when other things go down, glamping kind of stays the same or even goes up. People that are looking for that little staycation that, hey, we can't take the big family trip out to, the Southwest, but we could spend 3 days, at a nearby glamping resort here. And so I think it's something that's actually kind of helping insulate the glamping industry from some of the downturn that we've seen in traditional hospitality. I think the other differentiating factor, I think, is business travel. That's something, and Todd can probably speak more to this with his kind of hotel background, but for years, business travel has been the backbone of the hotel industry. And that's kind of their bread and butter, right? That's the part that pays the bills. And then your travelers, your vacationers, that's kind of bonus on top. We've seen, and I've seen with several of my clients, an increase in business travelers staying at a glamping resort, saying, my company will pay for this. They don't care where I can stay. And they kind of discovered the Airbnb, in its heyday, and said, oh, for the same price, and it's so much more comfortable than a hotel room. And a lot of the clients we've worked with are seeing an increase in business travelers, people that are in town for 1 or 2 days with business meetings, but they're making the choice to, hey, I'm going to stay at this cool glamping resort instead of a hotel or instead of an Airbnb.
Yeah, and I think just to clarify, like, I'm not at all worried about our industry, whether that's glamping or camping. I think there's always going to be, like you said, like you made very valid points. I think that in some cases, like we just used this RV park in California I was talking about as an example, I think you just are going to have to reframe perhaps based on what you were struggling or not struggling with. If you are struggling, to say like, okay, well, I'm going to go after locals. There's still people who want to camp. They're out there, but they maybe just don't know about me because I haven't marketed to them before. And so I think the health of our industry is fine. We just got to maybe have to, in some cases, case by case, reframe our thinking of who we want our ideal guest to be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think what what Zach was saying, like in 2009, 2010, when in Europe there was quite a crisis going on, actually the open air industry, it quite benefited from it, because there were a lot of people like downgrading from more expensive resorts towards the open air industry. So I think the occupancies in this business were probably it was one of the best periods in time because of these people falling back from more expensive solutions. So I think that's not being at the very top of the price level gives the opportunity to service like a bigger target group.
So I've got a question that kind of plays on that. I wanted to ask Sarah and James, because you guys are somewhat unique because you're in outdoor hospitality, but you're building a product for
the
outdoor
open air
hospitality.
industry. We're gonna change that. It's the open air industry. I like that better.
So what are you guys seeing? I mean, are you seeing an increase in sales? And would you take a couple minutes just to kind of talk about what you do and kind of the very unique product that you guys have?
Yeah. Well, I'd say that our experience really reflects what you've been saying, in that people are looking for a cheaper alternative, but they don't necessarily want to go from a luxury holiday in Europe, for example, to suddenly slumming it on a campsite. So our product, the idea of it is to enable people to take that camping holiday and elevate it, if you like, and turn it into a do-it-yourself glamping holiday. So our product is it is an awning that goes on a camper van, but you can put a wood-burning stove in there. People like to dress it all up with lighting and all the rest of it, and turn it into a really homely glamping style experience. So we found that certainly as people have moved away from those foreign holidays, they've started to look at our product as an investment, because it's not the cheapest on the market, but it's an investment that should last them, but will also enable them to save a lot of money, where they'll otherwise be spending it going abroad, and have a very comfortable and glampy experience on the campsite. Have you got anything to add on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a slower year for sales, hasn't it, of awnings, because with
I think that's
COVID, the staycation was on the rise, and now it's stabilised, and so we're seeing the figures come back down again. But people are still investing, and because it's a product that they can use to go away with or to camp in their own backyard. It's quite a versatile product. You don't have to go camping to use it. You can use it at home for garden parties and stuff. Have your own little glamping retreat out the back. So we're getting through, but there's been a definite sort of downturn in the UK this year. We've noticed.
I think a lot of it as well is down to the unpredictability of the weather. Because we are seeing, as everyone is, I think, more extremes of heat and more extremes of bad weather, and that unpredictability is creating volatility in terms of people, because that's quite an impulse purchase, and people can decide to buy it a week out from going on holiday, for example, or 2 weeks out from going on holiday. They don't have to book months in advance. So they can actually be guided to some extent by the weather, and we've definitely seen that affect sales either positively or negatively.
You said something really interesting that I want you to expand on a little bit. You mentioned that, kind of coming out of COVID, that, there was a bump or an increase in sales, and that you're looking at kind of a down sales year this year. Do you think it's really down, or are you seeing something closer to a stabilization, that it's down only because previous years were up?
Yeah, that's definitely the case. It was because it did go crazy during the COVID years, a couple of them. And like in retail, a lot of people thought that they could continue to ride that wave to some extent once people had learned about the product and once those sales were up. A lot of retailers invested heavily in inventory. We did the same. And then suddenly you've got loads of stock and people aren't buying it as much. So yeah, we definitely found that. But yes, you're right. If you look at the figures, what we're seeing now is actually the same as what we were seeing pre-COVID.
And what did you talk a little bit more about kind of what you've done from that boost? I mean, was that a chance to kind of innovate, expand your product line, add additional features? Like, you've been in business for 10 years now. So tell us a little bit about the evolution of the Glawning and kind of some of the new stuff that you guys have done.
Yeah, a lot of it is about adding features and making the product more user-friendly, because what we're competing against is camping products that are usually sold or often sold on how convenient they are, how quick they are to put up, and people like that. People like something that's quick to put up and very convenient. With ours, because people are decking them out with lighting and soft furnishings and all sorts of things, that convenience factor isn't there so much. So we really have to go hard on the comfort side of things and try and sell it to people as something that if they spend a bit more time setting up, they're there for a week, spend a bit more time setting up, and you're going to have a much more enjoyable week than you would if you're sat in a nylon tent and it's lashing down with rain and all the rest of it. So that's what we tend to do. And what we've found now is that because the main product lasts for so long, it's quite difficult to get repeat sales unless you've got lots of add-on stuff. So we're now developing lots of things like innovative awnings that go on the awning. So kind of awnings that go out the front for more shelter, different types of wood-burning stoves for cooking on, for doing pizzas and things, and then furnishings and that kind of thing. So for us, it's more about creating more products that people are going to want to enhance that experience.
And we have tweaked the product a lot since the early days when it was 100% cotton canvas and weighed a ton and came in like a big body bag type of thing, and now we've moved to polycotton, and it's got a zipped in ground sheet, and there's lots of different ways we've made it easier to care for and carry around over the years that we've had it, because we use it ourselves as well, of course, which is we kind of know the customer because we are the customer, so we've been using it ourselves and making changes as we go along to improve the product and think about what the customer pain points are, because we're having them too.
Can you walk us through, for everybody who doesn't know in the audience, perhaps just talk us through Glampfest and Glawning? How did you guys get started? What was the idea behind it? What were you trying to change?
So Glampfest, that's a different side to our business. That's a festival that we do. So Glawning itself came about because we had a camper van. We both had normal day jobs, if you like, professional type jobs, and we like to get away into the outdoors at the weekend. But what we found was, at the time, we actually had a vintage VW, so a lovely old vintage vehicle, and we had this kind of grey nylon monstrosity strapped to the side of it.
Disgusting.
And we thought it just doesn't look right for starters. But also it was very flappy. It was very cold when it was cold outside. It was very hot as soon as the sun came out. So we just thought there must be something better. And it turns out there wasn't what we were looking for. So I went and bought a bell tent and started hacking it apart in the garden.
Thought he was mad.
Yeah. And we got someone a local tent manufacturer to make a prototype that we tweaked. And then we just started going to festivals and things and selling them.
We started using it ourselves, and people would just come up on a campsite and say, where did you get this? You know, because we'd have the wood burner on inside and it would be actually attached physically to the camper van, and they'd never seen anything like it. So we started to think, yeah, we could probably sell a few of these. And over here, I don't know if it's the same with you, but there's loads of like festivals all over the country, all over the UK. You could go to about 5 festivals in a weekend if you wanted to. So we used to go along to all of those and with the product when it was fully formed and sell them and show them off.
Yeah.
We had more... No, go ahead, please. I'm sorry.
So we had them all piled up in our living room, and we were ordering kind of 10 at a time. And then as sales grew, we had to get a unit for storage. And then eventually we had to move manufacturing to the Far East, unfortunately, but that's the way of the world. It's cheaper, and the quality was actually better as well, I'm ashamed to say. So that's what we did, and then it kind of grew and grew, and we gave up the day jobs, and here we are. And Glamfest is a festival that is an offshoot of that business. So a lot of our customers were asking us if there was a place that we could all get together, and we started this festival, which has grown and grown over the years, and there's loads of people now come with their glawnings.
Yeah, we started with 100 of us in a little field, and we've just had the sixth one a couple of weeks ago, and there was 2,000 people there. So it's kind of just by word of mouth grown into a much bigger event, a bit of a beast. And yeah, gone from strength to strength really. So it's been good so far.
Last question, and then I want to make sure we have time for Sarah Stahl, who is weird. I have to say people's full names on the show. Sarah Stahl, who's going to talk about Retreat. But last question, where do you guys see yourselves going in the next few years? Do you want to just continue to scale this? Do you feel like you're going to diversify more into the add-ons you're talking about? What's the vision here if everything falls the way you would love it to fall?
Yeah, I think there are plans to scale at a modest rate. We're more into getting the product right and making sure that our customer service is right. So that's our focus, and we have got some ideas for some new products that we're releasing over the next year or so. Some that are about to be released this season, and then some in the pipeline for next season, including new designs of the actual main product, the main glawning product. So we'll see how they go.
It's still just the two of us, so we've got to kind of.
We like to keep it that way.
Work together and try not to put.
Lots of cool things were built with only the two of us, so.
Yeah. We can't
I'll tell you,
too much.
one of the things that I think is really cool about what you guys have done is that you focused on really the lifestyle and not the product. And hosting events like Glampfest and things, bringing those people together, it's building the lifestyle, which then creates the customer base for you that's doing that. But I think that's a good kind of lead into some questions for Sarah. Glamping in the US, it's certainly, and to our previous discussion, it's sort of the bug that people have to catch, right? If you can get them to come out and do it once, sometimes, that's the gateway drug, right? And we can get them to come back and try other stays or other units or other accommodations.
Yep.
But I'm curious, from kind of that lifestyle perspective, because you guys manage multiple sites and locations, how much of that has been a successful part of your business and important to getting return guests or repeat stays, especially where you're kind of one of the only options in your area.
So you're talking about the lifestyle piece as far as the customer perspective goes?
Yeah.
Yeah, this open air industry, that's a great name, by the way. It's my favorite industry to be in. I absolutely adore it. And just from a marketing perspective, I love getting to know the customer and solving problems and then turning them into business development opportunities. So our customers specifically from a lifestyle piece are the moms who have sons and husbands who are more adventurous. They want to have these outdoor adventures, and the mom is like, no, I'm not having it. So we have taken glamping up a notch. With all of our units have AC, private bathrooms, kitchenettes. You could cook in there. It's we say we've taken glamping and gone pro with it because our guests are the ones who are like really scared of the outdoors. And I'm a hiker myself, so I'm outside all the time. So it is interesting to interact with people who are like, they see a bug fly by their head and they're like freaking out, running into things because they don't want to interact with the outdoors. There's just like a fear of it. So glamping opens up a whole new opportunity as far as a customer base, because there's just a way for people to enjoy the outdoors who wouldn't have otherwise, a more traditional way. So as far as retreat is concerned, we noticed that probably about 50% of our customers don't want to leave the property. And again, we're a startup, so we have marketed it as a resort, but we're actually building the resort as we're bringing in income from the rental properties. And so we're constantly adding amenities and excursions because people want that. At least our customers in our region want that all inclusivity of, I want to bring all 15 of my friends. We each want our own unit. We'll rent out the whole property. We want you to supply the caterer. We want you to supply the activities. You tell us what to do and where to go. We'll pay for it and show up. So we actually can't even keep up with all of the demands that the customers want from us. Part of it is location based. We're located on Alabama's largest lake, but it is a more rural community. People ask us questions like, is there a grocery store there? Like I had a girl call yesterday. She's flying from Louisiana, and she asked if she had to bring all her groceries on the plane because she didn't know if we had a grocery store. And so it's neat to have to be the only one solving these problems, because it's going to be really difficult for somebody else to gain market share.
So talk us through how Retreat got started.
It got started, so the owner actually is a serial entrepreneur. He actually has another national business that he also operates. And him and his wife are entering into their retirement years. They're not completely retired yet. They moved across the street, bought a lake house, and fell in love with this little property. And they wanted to actually put fishing cabins because we're the bass capital of the country. And so there's anglers there fishing the lake year round. But it's basically the property's on the side of a mountain. And so he determined that would be too steep for them to, bring their trailers up. It would just be too difficult to park. So his daughters, who are in their late 20s, said, Dad, you really need tree houses. You really need glamping tents. So he just kind of went with that. And he started with 6 tree houses. And then he expanded to 6 glamping tents and 6 tiny cottages. And he's only built on about a third of the 40 acres that he owns. And so now he's building 4 more 2-bedrooms overlooking the property. There's a lake view, because we have such a demand now for bigger groups and people wanting multiple bedrooms. And the cool thing about launching in phases is he's just been able to maintain a good cash flow to continue to invest in building more properties.
Well, that's what I'm interested in, and I think Zach, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think most of the projects that we hear about from a glamping perspective are funded in advance and they're built in one shot, and you open up and you've got almost everything that you intend to have. Is that fair, Zach, or no? Most, not
No.
all. No. Okay. All right.
I don't know the
I would,
industry, but I don't know that route either.
yeah, I would say almost every project we do, we design the property as a whole, and we definitely go through the entitlements and permits for everything that we want. But almost every project is phased. And again, I think it's one of those advantages of this industry that makes it a little bit more approachable. When you look at a lot of, really well-established operators now, they started with 5, 6, 8 tents, and then maybe upgraded to nicer units, after a couple of years, or just like Sarah described, going to more hard side units or larger units, multi-bedroom units. And part of that is being responsive to the industry and your growth. You start out, you do your homework, you get a really good, market analysis, feasibility study, work with some consultants on what you think the demand is in an area, but you never really know until you open. And so that phased approach, knowing like, hey, we tried this unit, it's booked 96% of the year. So let's build more like that one, right? The same with missteps. We've got a client outside of Atlanta that put a couple of vintage Airstreams on their property, kind of when that was the craze, and AutoCamp was launching, and everybody was really into that. And they looked, a year later and said, these are our lowest performing. They booked the least amount of time, and it's just not as comfortable or unique as some of our other options. And so in the last year, they sold both the Airstreams and converted them to luxury tent sites. And so I think that's one area where glamping tends to be a little more nimble, and give operators a chance to kind of see what works, test it out without a major investment in it. But Todd, do you want to weigh in on that piece of it at all with your background and experience with that?
I want to hear from Todd, and I also want to say I think my ignorance will lead to a good question that maybe we can follow up on after Todd, and that's maybe talk us through a little bit. And this is a question to the whole group, right? How do you decide then your phases? Obviously, a lot of it is how much funding you have, but if you're coming at it from I have all the funding I need, how do you decide how slow do you go? Is it 2 cabins? Is it 6 cabins? Is it 10 cabins? Is it those kinds of things, right? But go ahead, Todd, please, first.
Yeah, I mean, our approach is typically the same as well in terms of guiding whoever the visionary of the product is kind of go from the end and work backwards from there. And if you can do everything all in one fell swoop, then that's great. If not, then a phased approach you can do that. I think you have to be conscious of if you're constructing during a period when people are actually staying there, that can get you some really bad reviews if people are hearing saws and hammers and things like that when they're trying to have a peaceful time on campus. So that is tough. But a lot of the stuff that I work on tends to be higher numbers in the 50 plus kind of range, or at least 30, I suppose. But I do draw a line of demarcation at about 20 units, and I say below 20 units tends to be a lifestyle where the principal or the sponsor is sort of going to be there, potentially cleaning bathrooms and changing beds and doing all those things. And then once you get over 20 units and you start getting a decent amount of cash flow, then you can start having an on-site manager, and whoever was the creator of the space might be able to take a step back and do another one somewhere, or look for the phase 2 or whatever. But it just kind of, up until, and this was the same when I was looking at bed and breakfast, and I was looking at motels, and there's just a line of demarcation at some point where it's your lifestyle and you're living and breathing it, and then it's actually a business. But if you can do it the way that Sarah's boss or owner is doing it, that's fantastic, because you're hopefully never getting out in front of your skis, because in the world of sort of risk, things with a lot of seasonality, going from, again, the lowest risk is sort of typically a commercial hotel that has tourists and it has business people and it has groups and it has events coming up. I mean, that's the lowest risk because you've got all these different demand generators coming at it. And then you work your way through to resorts that are open year round, and then you have resorts that are open, seasonally, and then you have islands, and that's like the most risky thing. But so this is still purely a leisure play, maybe some corporate meetings that you get midweek in the soft periods, but it's still a risky thing. So if you can stay out in front of your skis, or not out in front of your skis, but keep that debt and that cost below what your operating cash flow is generating, then that's good because it's still relatively small business, and you don't want to get out in front of your skis and have too much debt overweighing you for when the flood or the fire or the downturn or the labor unrest or whatever it might be. There's always risk in this particular industry.
So, Miguel, I'm curious, and I want to talk about phases, but you've been a little bit quiet over there, Miguel. Do you want to talk to us about how you built some of your resorts?
Yeah, sure, definitely. The first one, it was out of luck, true to be told. And we started with three inflatable bubbles in the center of Mexico. And then, because we had the database with the largest tour agencies in Mexico, we went viral. The second one and the most important one, it's right next to the Firefly Sanctuary, the center of Mexico. And I think that, and I mean, now we have two more, and there are two others that are coming up this year. And when we design our resorts, first of all, we need to take into consideration the client experience. And by that, I mean that each tent has their own private bathroom, that they have hot water, internet, private security. And lately, we have been incorporating things like to make it more business oriented. So we can host larger groups. Now, um, all of these insights that we have learned, it's because what we have been seeing in the last 2 months in Mexico specifically is that the industry is consolidating. So it is very well worthy to understand that you cannot rely on those leisure clients because at the end, the competition is high. There are other categories of hospitality that people are taking into consideration. So you have to have at least a certain number of units, and then try to market that and prioritize occupancy over the ADR. But that will depend on a weekly basis. The last thing that we have done and that I will strongly recommend everybody to incorporate is to plan their demand. So we are very strong on numbers. We have already came up with a methodology that allow us to identify, regardless of the location, how the demand is going to look like in a specific week. So, for example, this week on the three glamping sites that we have open, one we expect this week to be a high season week, and for the other two we expect this week to be low season for these two glamping sites. So the numbers are critical, and now with the consolidation that we're seeing in the market, you have to incorporate that into your design and into your operation because at the end, those operators that are the most professional will be the ones that will prevail in the market.
Are you seeing any changes in glamping behavior in Mexico, like we are a little bit in the States and Canada and Europe?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think that people are being more price sensitive, and I think that Zach mentioned that before that with the Fed that is not decreasing their interest rates. Here in Mexico, we just had presidential elections, so we're seeing that people are less likely to splurge, and they want to be more cost sensitive, which I think that it's great. And operators, they need to, again, to be very close to their numbers to see, okay, let's say that I have a small glamping resort with 3 units. Okay, maybe I can have a large rate, or but in my case, that on average I have 12 units per glamping site. There are weeks in which we rather have or we prioritize occupancy over the ADR. And the other thing that we're seeing is that a lot of glamping operators, sadly, they are exiting the market. So in the last 2 weeks, I got offers to acquire 4 glamping sites in Mexico. And I think that the industry will clean itself. I think that even though that is challenging, these are pretty interesting times. And again, the ones that are the most professional will prevail.
Are you seeing that, Zach, a little bit too? More people are maybe up for sale.
You know, I wouldn't say I've seen a lot. Um, we've we've had a couple of clients that, got to kind of the financing funding stage and decided that they needed to exit. And so, looking at basically a shovel-ready project, that they would rather sell to a potential investor who wants to come in and build it and do it. Um, I think we're starting to see not really consolidation yet. I think we're still a couple years out from that, but certainly we've seen some partnerships. The announcement with Hilton and AutoCamp. I think Marriott's getting ready to make an announcement sometime in the next couple of months. And I know that there's other established hotel operators that are looking at how do we partner with somebody to get into the glamping industry. What I've seen a lot of recently is a launch of some of these soft brands, where you look at, I think one of the biggest right now is Nook, where Nook is a soft brand, but they're pulling a lot of these very unique properties, still independently owned, independently operated, but they're bringing them together under one portfolio of a Nook experience, a Nook, a soft brand stay. And I think that's the early steps towards a consolidation model. So I think, yes, we're starting to see that, but I think a majority of the sites in the U.S. are still independently owned, independently operated, and for a lot of the reasons that Todd highlighted earlier. If you're on a small site or smaller location, it really only works under that sole proprietor model to have something that's third-party management, or something that would fit into a hotel portfolio. You really need just a larger unit count and a larger site to do it.
I'd like to echo something Miguel said, if that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Miguel, you gave really good advice. I just wanted to dive into that a little bit about understanding your numbers moving forward. So we've actually already set all of our pricing for 2025 according to what we've done in 2024, and then set aside certain blocked out weekends, because we actually lost a lot of business because our calendars opened for so long in advance with just a couple of different individual unit bookings, and we lost out on full property bookings. So understanding like the projection of what customers are historically doing and the way that they're traveling is really important, and I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, in our case, that definitely has been a game changer, because
Mm-hmm.
I think that with professionalization comes different business practices that some glampers or glamping owners are not used to, like revenue management. So, for
Mm-hmm.
example, in our case, we have sold the same tent for $50 a night, all the way to 400.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
which I think that 400 is quite competitive even for North American standards. And I do think that people need to pay attention on that. Sadly,
Mm-hmm.
maybe this is me being a numbers guy, but for example, I've seen a lot of different softwares that they are, um, how can I say this? But they don't react in a
Hmm.
in a propulsive way. They wait for your competition to raise their prices, and now that's the trigger that tells you, okay, you should raise your prices too. So you're being very reactive.
That's
In
what I
our
was going
case,
to ask you. Is there a software that you prefer?
uh, not really. I do. I mean, Excel, and hopefully
Oh,
they sponsor the podcast. Should be great. Maybe
okay.
with AI. But my point is that we run the numbers ourselves,
Okay.
and that has been life changing,
Okay.
honestly.
I think
Interesting.
also that, to be fair, I think there's less choice where Miguel is for software companies than there is in the United States, Sarah.
I think that's an interesting topic, though, that I'd love to hear from everybody on. And sort of alluded to earlier, Sarah and James mentioned that their product, it's kind of sort of an impulse buy, right? Somebody sees it and they're like, okay, we're gonna buy one of these, we're gonna do it. And I know that is feedback that we've gotten industry wide as far as how far out are people booking a glamping stay. And I'm curious because we have a lot of established operators here. What are you seeing? Is that an impulse buy? Is it people looking to book for the next weekend or a couple days out, or are people booking a couple weeks or months in advance? Because to Miguel's point, I think for those larger group accommodations, and Sarah, you talked about groups as well, that becomes the challenge. Is how much do you open? So I'd be interested to hear kind of what all you guys are seeing as far as lead time for bookings. How far out are people going, and then how are you managing that?
We go everywhere from like 12 months in advance until like 24 hours. But we definitely see we divided our guests. It's something we did recently in some groups. We have one group that's really, when they check out, they tend to book at least to block the period for the same type of holiday of the upcoming year. So here you have some very popular holiday periods, especially in April, May. And really, we are already now at almost 90% occupancy for next year because all those people are like rebooking. Then you have like a very big group traditionally in Europe that's booking around Christmas for the summer holiday. And that's because in some type of jobs, you have to communicate your vacation at the beginning of the year. And the one who is like asking the days, the first gets like the best days. So people working in hospitals, this kind of jobs in Europe. And then actually, traditionally, nothing happens or not that much happens in March, April, and May. And then in June, July, we have a lot of last minute for arrival, July, August. So we have like this basically three big booking moments during the year.
Hmm.
And in Europe, it looked like a couple of years ago, the trend was going much more towards last minute. And actually, after COVID, we noticed that it's going back a little bit more to a traditional pattern like that we used to see 10 years ago. So more people booking in this December, January period and less people waiting for the last minute.
For us, the majority of our bookings happen 3 to 6 months in advance for individual, and then we fill our gaps with last minutes. But for group bookings, we book a year in advance.
Yeah, and we also see very clearly that the sales channel is very different because when we book in advance, it's mainly through our direct channels. So our direct website or like people calling or sending emails. And when it's last minute, it's a lot through OTAs. Like we are working with live connections with all actually the OTA portals. And that's the real traffic source that's there in last minute. So I also think in last minute people are much more price driven, while the ones booking in advance are much more like I would say offer driven because they really want to secure the spot on the site they choose in the period they choose.
Those are facts right there. Yep.
Yeah, but I think that now that we have a larger supply, what we're seeing is that the lead time between the booking and the check-in dates, it's getting shorter. So I mean that's part of the industry. I don't think that somebody should take a word for granted. What do I mean by this? I love about the glamping resort in Alabama looks quite appealing to me. And I'm pretty sure that because of their market conditions, their lead times are way different than, for example, in my case, that I have a glamping site in San Miguel Allende, and there
Yeah,
are internal and external factors that I think that it has to be considered on a base-to-base basis, on a
I agree.
case-to-case basis.
Yeah. Our market is much different, and we're literally the only one within a 2 hour in the state, and then regionally 2 to 3 hour radius. Yeah.
It's a good problem to have.
Yep.
All right, we're a couple minutes over here. I want to make sure we wrap up the show on time. Again, as always, I'd love to continue to have a great discussion with all you guys. Thank you, Zach, for picking up my slack today. I was kind of discombobulated and not all together today. So appreciate you guys joining us. Does anybody have any final thoughts about anything we've talked about? We just kind of go maybe around the room and just briefly, and if you need to head off, please go ahead. I know we're a little bit over, but just tell us where we can learn more about your respective business and get a hold of you on your website or something. You want to start, Sarah?
Well, I just wanted to say this has been a great conversation, and on my day-to-day, I don't get to talk to industry professionals. So is there like a place where you guys meet for ongoing conversation?
Yeah, that's a good question, Zach. Is there a Facebook group or anything that has been put together for glamping specifically that you know of?
I think I should probably start one.
The AGA is a Slack.
Yeah,
right?
I was going to say if you're a member of AGA, yeah, they've got a lot of good resources for operators. I think they've got a Slack channel. There are a couple of Facebook groups, but they're more oriented towards I think traditional campgrounds, kind of RV campgrounds. There's some ownership groups in there. But certainly, reach out to any of us. I mean, I'm always happy to connect you with other folks. I've made kind of some mentorship referrals to some of our clients. Hey, I think you would really benefit from getting to know this person or something along those lines. So, but yeah, I think the AGA is a really good resource for glamping in the U.S.
Okay, thank you.
Sarah, I'm happy to give you some advice on tech stack and revenue management. I've got people that I work with very closely that set up the whole commercial strategy and can give you advice on the various different software that will maybe improve those last minute dollar amounts as opposed to the year out. So contact. I think we're connected on LinkedIn, perhaps. So.
Thank you.
Okay, Sarah, where can they find out more about Retreat?
Super simple. Retreat.fun. That's RETREET.
Thank you, Sarah. Appreciate you being here. Miguel, where can they find out more about either your resorts, give us both, or the Mexican Glamping Association?
Yeah, sure. Well, our company is Nantli.travel, Nantli.travel. Or they can reach out to me over LinkedIn, Miguel Huerta. And of course, the Mexican Glamping Association, although everything is in Spanish, Asociación Mexicana de Glamping, but I'm pretty sure that we'll be around, or if not, LinkedIn is always a good idea.
Great.
Awesome. Thank you for being here again, Miguel. Sarah and James.
Yeah, you can find us at glawning.com. Lots more information there. There we are. There's the product. So yeah, it's been really interesting to talk glamping on a global scale, actually, because we often feel very blinkered with our UK view of it, don't we?
I was very interested to hear Sarah's point about the organising excursions for people, because that's a very unusual model for us here in the UK. It's usually kind of give me the keys and leave me alone. But I like that idea of people turning up and saying, look, just organise the whole thing for us. And
when is the next Glamp Fest? Is there one?
May 2025, 9th to the 11th of May 2025. Yeah.
So we just missed it. Okay. All right.
You just missed it, unfortunately.
Alessandro.
Yeah. So more information about us, it's on vacanzecolcuore.com, which is impossible to spell, but I think easiest way is just look me up on LinkedIn and then you will find the links.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you for being here again, Alessandro. Todd.
Yeah, I'm at horwathhtl.com. Also on LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram under those names. Anytime, give me a call.
Awesome. Last but not least, Zachary.
You can get me at my email address is zach@clockwork-ad.com. Our website is clockwork-ad.com. And I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, Insta, all the channels. And always happy to meet new folks, especially folks that are expanding or building something new, and happy to help however we can to get more people in the industry.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for being here. Really appreciate it. We're going to wrap up another episode of MC Fireside Chats. We'll be back next week talking about with some campground owners and things like that with that segment of the industry. But until then, thanks, guys. Really appreciate your time for joining us and for great conversation. We'll see you guys in a month for glamping again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
This episode of MC Fireside Chats with your host, Brian Searl. Have a suggestion for a show idea? Want your campground or company in a future episode? Email us at hello@moderncampground.com. Get your daily dose of news from moderncampground.com. And be sure to join us next week for more insights into the fascinating world of outdoor hospitality.